therapist. In this space, I'm a mentor. And what that means is it's my job to help guide you. Most women who I work with are in a place where they feel confused, overwhelmed, anxious, stuck, all the things. And I think of it like, many of you are in the yoga world, and so you've seen that picture of the person, sitting cross-legged and all the different chakras, right? The alignment, and it's all peace and alignment. And I work with women and they're like all out of alignment because they're thinking one thing and their heart's over here, and then, there's other parts over here. And it's my great opportunity to help you create integrity and alignment, because when you're not all torqued out internally, then you can create the kind of life that you want. So welcome. Thank you for being here. And let's jump into the first question. Those of you who are here live, please feel free to post in the comments. I'll keep an eye on them and do my best to follow along if they pop up on my screen. So the first question I have, I am the high desire person in my relationship. I'm tired of feeling rejected, but also want to be intimate with my partner. What do I do? So let's start by talking a little bit about desire and intimacy and sex. In my 8-week course that I offer for women, the Relationship Mastery course, part of what we spend week 5 on is sex and intimacy in relationships. And we wait until week 5 because we need to spend a whole month getting really good grounding in yourself, really good foundation. So here are some things that I teach the women who I work with about sex. Sex is an appetite, right? And it's important for you to recognize, just like you might have a high appetite for Brussels sprouts, your partner might have a high appetite for steak. One is not better than the other. They're just different. We don't often have the experience where I want Brussels sprouts at the same time and place that my husband wants Brussels sprouts, the same day, the same moment, with an equal amount of enthusiasm, right? But that's literally what our desire is it's an appetite, right? And we can impact our appetite by, if I'm thinking about it, like, oh my gosh, I love Brussels sprouts and I love this particular sauce that I can put on my Brussels sprouts. It's the same with sex. Oh, I love sex. I love the way that my partner touches me, or I'm fantasizing or imagining, or maybe I'm reading erotica. All of those things will build an appetite, right? And so the first thing to remember is that we come to relationships with different appetites. And your partner's appetite is going to be different from yours, just like it's different from yours in terms of coffee or tea in the morning, just like it's different for so many other things. It's just when it comes to sex, we tend to take it really personally. And so if our partner doesn't want to do it in the same way, in the same time, if they're not showing up in a particular way, then we take it personally, which I understand because you're human and we take things personally and we can feel rejected. And it's really important for you to have the ability to back way up, right? This is what I teach for the women who I mentor, is how it is that you back way up and get out of the identity that you've been stuck in, the identity that can get really torqued around I'm being rejected, or I'm not good enough, or she or he doesn't love me or like me, or they're not attracted to me. Those things may or may not be true. I don't know. But your reaction to it, the meaning that you're making about it, is part of what torques you, okay? So having the practice to back out of it so that you can see what you're choosing in that moment is super important. It's called being present. It's called being awake and aware of what it is that you're creating and recreating and co-creating. When we have difficulties in our sexual lives, which most people do who are in committed long-term sexual lives, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, part of what it's so important for you to pay attention to is what is it that you are telling yourself? What are you programming yourself with? Whatever you program yourself with, that's your truth. Those are your beliefs that will craft and create your experience of the world. And so everybody has programming. You do get to decide what you're going to let in and what you're going to keep recreating. And when it comes to gap and desire, which is, the sex therapists in here know this, that it's notoriously the hardest thing to work with in couples, because it's like if one person wants steak and the other person doesn't like steak. Like, how do you make somebody want to have steak when they don't want to have steak, right? Like, we're just different, right? And part of how it is that we start collaborating around our intimate life is to stop making it about the steak. Okay. Is that a terrible metaphor I'm realizing that I'm using right now? Maybe it is. I don't know. You can let me know. Stop making it about the steak. It's not about that. It's actually not about the sex, right? It's all the meaning that we're putting on the sex. So when we can back way out and look at what's the point, right? What's the point of this relationship? Why am I here? One of the things that I do with the women who I guide is I help them get some clarity on their why. Like, what's the point? Why am I here? If you got married or if you're in a long-term relationship because you want it to be easy, you want it to be fun, you want someone to, love and accept you all the time and experience unconditional love, good luck. Because, that can be part of it. But the other bigger part of it is around you being super uncomfortable, you being invited to grow, you looking at your shadow, if you're awake enough to recognize that you're looking at your shadow, you being in a relationship with somebody who's going to mirror the parts of you that you don't want to see. Probably most of us become the worst version of ourselves with our partner, and then we're liable to blame them for it, right? So it seems like that's the hard part of marriage, but it's actually the really amazing part, because we can't change the parts of us that we're unwilling to see, okay? So let's get back to this gap and desire. You and your partner want something different, okay? So it's really important for you to take stock of what it is that you're making it mean, that your partner doesn't want to be intimate the ways that you do. What are the stories that you're telling yourself? And I would suggest that you write them down. I'm making it mean that I'm not attractive. I'm making it mean that my partner is thinking about their old lover. I'm making it mean, write all those things down, okay? The other thing you can do is get really curious about, how do I make it difficult for my partner to want to be intimate with me? Where is it that maybe I have barbs, pokies, right? Energetically. Am I mean? Am I unkind? Am I judgmental? Am I exasperated? Am I needy? And I don't mean needy in we all need things when we're in a relationship, right? Because we're in a tiny community with our partner. I mean needy like glommy, like sticky, right? If you're sticky on your partner, they might be like, get off me. It's too much. So whenever we have difficulties in our relationship, that is the moment for you to get super sober about what you're bringing to the relationship. And if you're going to be in a long-term relationship, you will be invited to get sober over and over and over and over again about countless things. And it just continues. I'm 21 and a half, not quite a half, sorry, 21 years married with my husband. And there's always something. There's just always something, which brings me back to the why, right? My why for being married, it was different 21 years ago. It was like somebody who was my rock climbing partner and we had fun together, right? Seemed like a nice guy, and why not? So that why was really different than my why today. My why today is about growth. It's about embodying my highest potential in the circumstances, culturally, maritally, personally, that are incredibly challenging. One of my mentors said last week, which I just love, he said, you don't go to the gym to lift a feather to get stronger, right? And similarly, those of us who are here alive on this planet or who choose to embark on long-term relationship and be awake and aware during it, we are going to be asked to lift heavy weights. That's how we get stronger. And so those of you who are struggling right now in this moment with your sex life, notice I said struggling right now in this moment, because you don't need to be struggling in the next moment or the next moment or the next moment. You can shift it at any time. You can shift the struggle by recognizing I'm not here to lift a feather in my marriage. I don't get stronger lifting a feather. I get stronger when I put a lot of weight on that bar and I have to heft it up and I have to have good form or else I'll get hurt. Those of you who are weightlifters out there know what I'm talking about. You got to make sure your core is strong. You have to be super focused, right? You have to know what you're doing and what your objective is. And it's the same in your marriage and your relationship with your intimate life. So learning how to practice, have good form. You showed up in this boot camp of marriage. It's not easy. If you want it to be easy, get a divorce and go live by yourself. But that's challenging in a whole other way, right? And most women who I work with are like, but I don't want to. We have all these years together or this or that. Then great. You're in the boot camp, lift the heavy weight, right? What do you need to do to lift the heavy weight? Usually what it requires is you stop focusing externally on what's happening in the sex life thing and come back in here and look at what are you making it mean? How do you ground yourself? How do you not be glommy or sticky? Where is it that you're wanting your partner to take care of a need of your own? Where is it that you chose a partner that maybe is not super interested in sex, but you chose them anyway? So that's an interesting boot camp that you chose, right? So there's a lot of internal work to do before you get to the strategies to fix your sex life. One of my kind of gripes about most sort of traditional, books or articles, some therapy as it pertains to sex, is it goes straight to strategy, like date nights or the fancy panties or, scheduling a particular, every Thursday we're going to do it, whatever that is. And it's not that those strategies are bad, but the strategy without doing the internal work first, without becoming sober to your own programming, without noticing where you're glommy, without looking at where it is that you're looking for your partner to satisfy a need or a wound from your childhood, right? If you're not looking at this stuff first, no strategy is going to work. And which is why you will try those strategies and it's like, well, this isn't helping. Yeah, because it's 20% strategy. Anybody who runs their own business knows everything in your business is 80% psychology, 20% strategy. You can have the best coach in the world. You can have the best strategy in the world. But if your psychology is torqued, right, out of alignment, that strategy isn't going to work. It's the same in your sex life. The other part of that is to know that sex is a big invitation for growth. For statistically, 78% of people who are in long-term relationship. So that's us, okay? So welcome to the club. That's how it goes. So lay down the struggle and the resistance to it and accept that this is the heavy weight that I'm lifting. So how do I start coming at it differently? I just had a private client message me and ask, we're having a WhatsApp message back and forth about being a victim. And, she was like, well, isn't there sometimes when you just are a victim? You're a victim to whatever's happening around you. And it's easy to feel like you're a victim, for those of you listening to this, as it pertains to your sex life, that I married somebody or I'm in a relationship with somebody who doesn't want to be intimate with me. As soon as you feel victim to that, right, feel that energy, what comes over you. When I'm a victim to a circumstance, I just gave up my power, my authority, my sovereignty, my accountability, right? I gave it all up because this person now is the perpetrator. This circumstance, I'm victim to it. When the truth is, in my world, you can choose something else. You can do all kinds of things, right? To shift how it is that you do intimacy together. But coming at it from an up level, those of you who've been around for a while, I talk about the energy frequency scale a lot. From a higher energy frequency of acceptance, of curiosity, of willingness, doing that work first so that you can come to the situation of intimacy differently. And because if you come to the situation of intimacy from a place of blame, shame, coercion, feeling bad about yourself, self-judgment, self-terrorizing, that they're going to leave you, all of those things, terrorizing, bullying yourself or your physical appearance, whatever it might be, that is not going to get you into a loving, mutually satisfying sexual relationship, right? And the only way, victim consciousness is low vibrational consciousness. There's a difference between being a victim to my purse just got stolen. So I'm the victim, quote unquote, right? That's how we talk about that. That's okay. There's a whole different thing when I'm a victim too, right? Then I have no authority anymore. And my work, really the foundation of everything that I teach and I do with the women who I work with is helping you get out of that state. Because once we liberate you out of that state, you can create what you want, right? And it may be that in this particular relationship that you're not a good sexual match. That you might decide that, and that's totally fine. So what are you going to do with that information? Some women who I work with say, you know what? Our sex life is okay, and the rest of our life is really amazing. And so I will be accepting of the okayness of our sexual life and will continue to explore new ways to be with it from a higher frequency state, because on balance, it's actually really great. And I understand that as a human, I'm going to have heavy weights to lift somewhere. Beautiful, great. For some people, it's no, I want to have this sexual expression. And so you negotiate. Maybe it's having an open relationship. Maybe it's a trial separation. Maybe you separate or get a divorce or break up. Awesome. What are you going to do with the information once you know it, right? That's the other big piece, is that if you have a knowing, listen to it. If you are listening to this and you're I just know I'm not with the right person, then listen to that and do something with it, because you will be extraordinarily frustrated if you have knowing, but then you're doing something else. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So, it can be a bugger, sexual mismatch. That's how it goes. So welcome to the club. It's cool. You'll get through it. And part of getting through it is doing your own inner shifting and staying the course, creating a new story, doing the healing that you need to do, showing up differently with your partner, looking at how you can invite your partner into an experience, not into something that you feel demanding or needy around. Looking at your relationship from a wide perspective, getting really sober and honest with yourself about your relationship and all aspects of it, listening to your knowing. So I hope that's helpful. I'm just going to check and see if there are any questions on the feed here real quick. Again, if you're watching this on the replay, please #replay, leave any questions or comments that you might have for me, and I will address them. All right, the second question that I'm going to address today that came in over the week is, it all feels like too much work in my relationship. How do I get motivated when I feel so meh? So I would ask you, do you feel meh about your life? How do you get motivated about your life? Right? This actually, in some ways, is really similar to the conversation about sex, because what is important in a relationship is, what our relationship with our partner always begins with our relationship with ourselves. And so if you feel meh about your relationship, your marriage, I would invite you to look at, where do you feel meh with your relationship with yourself? Where is it that you're not expressing fully who you are, which I find often for so many women who I work with, that they're not doing the things that they feel like they should or could be doing. So let me give you some concrete examples, okay? Most women who I work with say things like, I know I should get more exercise. I know I should be outside in nature more. I know I need to get more sleep. I know I need to be better about my diet, right? So you have knowing, usually from your body. Those are mostly all body things because I'm tired. My body's tired. My body wants more nourishing food. My body wants more exercise. So those are body knowings, but then what happens is your mind overrides your body. Your mind is like, yes, but fill in the blank. And in that, when you do the yes, but, and you ignore your body, that will create a state of disconnection, a state of meh, because you're not listening to yourself. You're not listening to what it is that you need for your vitality, to take a pottery class, to go to the beach, to walk barefoot in the dirt, to grow a garden, to whatever it is. And I know what you're thinking, but I don't have the fill in the blank time, the money, the resources, the energy. Again, I mean, honestly, why the F are you here? Right? Like, why are you here on this planet? What's your point? What's your why? If your why is to put off your pleasure, your joy, it's not even self-care. I don't like that word self-care because it feels so like mamsy-pamsy. If you're going to put off your vibration, like you living your vibrant life for some other day, guess what? That other day is never going to come. Like now is the day. Today is the day. This moment is the moment. There's nothing else but this moment. And so this moment might mean that you put your phone down and you go to bed 30 minutes early and the laundry doesn't get folded, or whatever the thing is, the email doesn't get cleaned out, or the dishes stay in this sink. But to start a practice of listening to yourself. If you feel meh about your marriage, what is it that you're not paying attention to in it, right? If it feels like, oh my gosh, it just feels so hard, like the weights in the gym, to use the metaphor from earlier, the weights in the gym are just too heavy. Do you want to be in the gym? Do you want to go somewhere else? Like, what's up, right? Where did your vitality for life go? It's a question for you to consider. I think it's really easy to have this belief that we will have enjoyment or pleasure when all these other things are done. The house is clean, we have certain money in the bank, the kids are in the school, my job is whatever. And the truth is that you will be joyful and happy and feel alive in your life when you decide to, and when you start taking decisive action, which will probably mean getting outside of your comfort zone. So if you feel meh in your marriage, if it feels like a lot of work, my guess is you need support and help. Part of the reason why I do what I do the way that I do it now in group with women where I have lots of contact with them is because most of us, when we get to the place where we're super stuck, like I need someone to help uplift my energy because on my own, I can't do it. Right? It's why I have coaches for all kinds of different things. It's why, I used to have a lifting coach and a workout coach, because for me to like get all excited to go work out at 5 o'clock in the morning was not going to happen. That was all about, meh, that's too much work. But if I was paying somebody and had to show up to do it, oh, honey, I'm going to be there. And then I get to ride their energy. I get to ride their enthusiasm. I get to start seeing things anew. I get to see my progress. I get to see my growth. I get to experience something that on my own, I'd be hitting the snooze button right on my alarm. I wouldn't be pushing myself, right? Living a vibrant marriage and a vibrant life is very much like living in a vibrant body, and many people who I know who are athletic, who are very embodied, whether they have an embodied practice of meditation or an embodied practice of CrossFit or weightlifting, or they're runners or cyclists or whatever it might be, they have coaches. They have a team. they have people to help them. They have a community, right? Because on their own, it's number one, not as fun. Number two, they have to then create the whole map on their own. And it just feels like too much work. And so never mind, I'm not going to go for a mountain bike ride, or I'm not going to go to the gym, or I'm not going to go try to run that marathon. But if you want to run that marathon, you get a buddy, you follow a program, right? And that builds your enthusiasm. And then you learn new things along the way. Oh, I can do this with diet, or I can start doing, this kind of weightlifting to, support my running endeavor. So if you feel meh, what that tells me is you might need an infusion of community, of support, of a guide, of a map. If you're interested in potentially working with me, great. Email me, send me a DM, go to my website, jennyglick.com. Well, easy to find me. If you want to work with somebody else, go do that, okay? Nobody can have your motivation for you. You have to decide. Unfortunately, sometimes we get to the place where we wait for so long. We make it so hard. It's a lot like weight, like putting on a lot of weight. The more weight you put on, the harder it is to get it off, right? The more distance I allow to go between me and my partner, the harder it can feel to cross that chasm. We're just so used to suffering that we will readily just do this thing. And so many women who I work with are like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have done this 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? But we're just trained to suffer. Don't suffer. If you need permission to not suffer, I give you permission to no longer suffer and to find the community, the support, the map, the guide that you need in order to help you find that enthusiasm. There are a lot of things I'm not good at on my own. And so I find people who are good at them and I hang out with them. I hire them. I hang out with people who hang out in their circles, because then I can, in cycling, they talk about riding the draft, right? I can draft them. So I get to be buoyed by their momentum that they have. So I hope that this has been helpful. Again, if I missed, I think there was one more question actually. I know this is long, but I think I'm going to answer it anyway, because there was one more question that I wanted to try to get to. Yeah. So how do you know when a relationship is just no longer serving you and it's time to walk away? I feel like I addressed this in pieces, but I want to name that because I had several people privately message me about that as well. It's such an important awareness for us to know ourselves enough to learn how to trust ourselves and to know when we're complete. Again, we live in a culture where we have a really challenging time, especially for women. We've been taught not to listen to our knowing, not to listen to our bodies. And so we have this disconnect where I want to sleep, but my mind's like, you can't sleep. You have to do this other stuff. Or I want to not have sex, and my mind's like, you can't not have sex. Your partner will be mad at you. You have to have sex anyway. So then you do. There are a million examples I could give you of that. Similarly, if you have a knowing that I'm complete in this relationship, I want you to notice what your mind says. Well, you can't be complete. You've been married 30 years or 20 years, or you have a child, or what's going to happen in the house. Yes, there are practical things, and you can set those aside for right now as you listen to what do you know, right? What do you know? And you look at what's the point of being married. So many of us, I got married in my 20s, and who I was then is very different than I am 20 years later. And my husband and I have done the arduous and rigorous work of renegotiating who we are now, because we're both different now. And it's not uncommon for people to split right around the 20-year mark, especially if they have kids, because they came together and stayed together for the children. And then once the child or children launch, then it's like, who are we? And getting really clear on your why. If you're not spending time in contemplation, if you're not spending time in prayer or reflection or discernment, if you're not quiet to listen from here down, not to your head, right? Our head doesn't have a lot of knowing. your head has a lot of programming, which is why our heads get confused and we're not sure. But down here, we have knowing. It's like, but you have to build a practice. This is what I do with my clients, is build a practice of listening. I have a lot of women say, but I just don't trust myself. Well, yeah, if you're not hanging out with yourself, you're going to have a hard time trusting yourself. So hang out to feel into, oh, I recognize that I am different than who I was when I got together with my partner. Okay, cool. And it may be that it's time to walk away. It may be that it's time you're being invited to have some really challenging but growth-producing conversations, right? And so to do that work of your own growth outside of, our comfort zone is where it is that we grow, out here, and we like to live in here. And sometimes, yes, maybe you need to leave a relationship, but maybe it's more about I'm being invited to be more honest in my relationship, to show up and have conversations that we haven't been able to successfully have because I've been afraid that if I say what's really going on with me, he or she will get mad, pull away, shut down, feel bad about themselves, feel like a failure, whatever. That's called codependence, right? And so then it's easy to say, oh, I don't want to be in this relationship because I can't be who I am without them getting hurt and sulking or whatever the story is. When the truth is, you could maybe be in this relationship and you might actually enjoy being in it if you weren't practicing being codependent. So start practicing not being codependent, right? Start practicing really showing up, and it'll be super uncomfortable, and that's cool, but that's your growth, right? And then maybe you do end up leaving the relationship, but you get to have that good practice of being vulnerable, of saying what's going on, of being transparent, of saying things out loud that you haven't wanted to say, being really clear about your why. There's many, many aspects of it in my world prior to calling it in a marriage. And if you've done all of that growth work and you've had all those conversations, and if you truly feel complete, beautiful, it's an antiquated idea in my world that you're going to, hook up with somebody in your 20s or 30s or 40s or whatever, and then stay together till the day that you die. We're just really dynamic, and some people will do that, and some people will do that happily, and other people will have lots of different relationships because that's their growth path. And so getting clear on what your growth path is. In my humble opinion, leaving a relationship, blaming the other person, making the other person wrong is not a time to leave a relationship. It's a time for you to get sober to your own, what you're bringing to that relationship. So that is a really big question, and I'm happy to speak about it more during another live sometime, but let me know if I got to the meat of it. There's a lot there, and it can be a really helpful place to have guidance to walk you through that path, especially if you want to be really discerning and ensure that you're getting everything out of the classroom experience that you're in with this particular relationship, the boot camp, before you move on to the next one. Because what I know is you're going to take your programming with you. You're going to take yourself with you. You're going to take your identity with you, whether you're alone or you're in relationship after you're complete, you divorce, you leave this relationship. And so it's just super wise to harvest all of your growth out of one relationship before you move on to the other. Hope that this has been helpful. Thank you so much for being here. I am enrolling in my 8-week program. It starts in September. If you're interested in that, it's an 8-week relationship mastery program with me. We do 2 group calls a week. We do individual calls and curriculum and community and all the good stuff. DM me, reach out, and we'll see if you're a fit. And if you are, we will look at getting you enrolled. So have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. Post your questions below. I will look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.